So whether you're interested in starting 75 hard, or you're just kind of curious, or you're dead set on doing it, here are some tips of mine that will hopefully make it as easy and smooth of a process as possible. All right, let's dig in. Number one on my list is to be prepared. And by that I mean prepare before starting 75 hard. It's definitely something where you should take a day or two and plan out what diet are you going to use, what rules are you going to follow, what variation of 75 hard are you going to do. Diet, I would pick something that you have done before. You don't have to, but I would recommend not starting a completely new diet while also doing 75 hard. 75 hard is very time consuming, so if you're also trying to figure out, okay, what's this new diet, whether it's counting calories or 1 meal a day, whatever it may be, keto, whatever it is, you don't want that additional stress on top of just regular 75 hard. So I would recommend pick a diet that you're already familiar with, if you can. There's this interesting dilemma with 75 hard where while most of the rules are very understandable, there's a few that are a little vague, and there's multiple different kind of interpretations of what those rules are. You should go through and decide for yourself what rules you are going to follow and what variations you're going to interpret as being the actual rules. Additionally, you should also think about edge cases and really understand what some of those boundaries will be. For example, does the day end at midnight? Does it end just whenever you go to bed? Does it end at 2 a.m.? You know, stuff like that. You'll find that with 75 hard, if you don't have clear boundaries, you'll find yourselves in different situations eventually, and our minds, when we're in 75 hard, we're doing the same thing over and over again. We're trying to be as efficient as possible. Some of those rules will kind of go out the window. So deciding things up front, like when does the day end? What do workouts mean? Do walks count, for example, right? Deciding all that up front will make you feel a lot better versus deciding those as you go, because it can feel really sketchy to be doing the challenge and all of a sudden on the 12th day, well, wait, does a walk count or does it not count? Now, almost sounding like a contradiction, number 2 on my list is to start as soon as possible. And what I mean by this is when you read 75 hard's list of tasks, for example, you can't drink any alcohol, it's very tempting to, well, I'll wait a few months until it's a better time to not drink for 75 days. I caution against that, and I say that you should start as soon as possible. Yes, take some time to prepare, but limit it to 1 or 2 days. By default, you will not be fully prepared for 75 hard, and that's kind of the point. You'll never be fully ready, it'll never be the perfect time. As soon as you start 75 hard, you will just literally wish you had started earlier. It's one of those things. So, if I can give you one word of advice, it's start as soon as you can. That was many words, but you get the idea. All right, flying right into the third tip I have, it is to plan ahead. Now, again, when I say plan ahead, I don't mean weeks or days in advance. It's mostly each day you should have a solid plan of how you're going to handle your day. And if, okay, when do I have work? What are the constraints? Maybe your job, you have to, wear certain clothes. You're not allowed to be sweaty. You need to shower at certain times. Getting an understanding ahead of time. Maybe it's the weekend. I think for me personally, the weekend was the most sporadic. It had less routine. There was a lot of edge cases. Each weekend was a little bit different than the others versus, maybe weeknights are a little more similar, right? There's a little more routine there. So plan your day ahead, at least have a loose idea of, okay, if this, then that. If work goes late, then I will do this. Otherwise, my priority is to get this workout in. I can't emphasize enough how much having a plan can really help. And again, this is where 75 hard kind of almost ridicules you. If you try to plan too far in advance, you will hit obstacles in 75 hard. Don't plan too much. But with that said, have some idea of where you're going to schedule various tasks throughout the day. Every single day, get at least one task done first thing in the morning. It doesn't have to be a hard one, it doesn't have to be a difficult one, but if you can, first thing when you get out of bed, do one of the tasks. It puts you in the right mindset, it focuses you, it builds habits, and it makes you feel productive. It's kind of the 75 hard equivalent of making your bed in the morning, right? If you're not sure what one to do, I find that the progress picture is the easiest. You just step out of bed, take your picture, boom, done. The days that I did that were definitely much easier than the days that I did not. So moving on to tip 5, it's actually one of my favorites, and the tip is also the lesson I learned from 75 hard. And that lesson is, don't think. In general, I found that 75 hard really works well when you stop thinking about it. So leading up to 75 hard, you analyze it, you think about it, you decide it's something you want to do, okay, that's the time to think. And then as soon as you decide to do it and you commit, stop thinking about it. One really great example of this is I caught myself early on thinking, will I make it today? And instead, I changed that to don't think about it. You're just going to do it. I almost see it as you've turned off your brain. You've decided, hey, I've researched this, I've looked into it, I've analyzed it, and I want to do 75 hard. And then you start it, and then you don't listen to that other voice in your head that says, I'll start tomorrow, or if we start over today, it's not the end of the world, right? Or blah, blah, blah. I find that doing that is super useful in filtering out that unhelpful voice that I think we all have that tells you can't do something or just says it'll be way easier to do this instead. Now, tip number 6 is going to be a little interesting. Whatever you do, make every single effort to succeed on 75 hard your first try. And the reason behind that is that statistically, every single time you do not complete 75 hard and you have to start over, you are less likely to complete 75 hard. You have your #1 highest chance to complete 75 hard the first time. That actually honestly helped me a bit. Around 20 or 30 days into 75 hard the first time, I almost had this fear, this very helpful fear that, hey, if I don't make it and I have to start over, I'm not guaranteed to make it, right? So I have to, I don't get to retry, I have to make it through 75 hard on the first time. And so for me, that really helps. So you should do whatever you can to succeed the first time. Don't let this tip make you want to over-prepare, again, because you can never be fully prepared for 75 hard. It's more so when you are wanting to quit, really rethink that, knowing that, hey, if I quit now, I will be much less likely to succeed on the next attempt if I go to retry. All right, moving right on to tip number 7. Tip number 7 is don't dwell on obstacles. And this, I think, is as much a tip as it is a learned lesson. Again, when you hit obstacles, it doesn't help you at all to worry about them. There's always going to be obstacles in life, and really extra, especially so, there will always be obstacles in 75 hard. You'll have days where everything is really easy and everything just goes your way. Then you'll have days where you hit every single obstacle imaginable. It just doesn't give you any energy, it doesn't help you, it doesn't benefit you to dwell on any of those obstacles or worry about them or even acknowledge them. I got to the point towards the end of 75 hard where I think I was day 72, and I got really bad food poisoning and I was throwing up. And I just didn't even think about it. It wasn't great, but I still did my 2 workouts. I was almost puking my guts out. I don't think I could have done that if I hadn't already learned that lesson from 75 hard. If I'd gotten sick, the first 20 days of 75 hard, I hadn't learned that lesson just yet. But by the end of 75 hard, yeah, it was something that really helped me. It's like, okay, don't dwell on obstacles. It's mostly just like, anytime there's an obstacle, you're not going to think about it. And that doesn't mean ignore it. Plan accordingly, react to it, handle it. Don't let that voice start talking to you like, oh, this is an obstacle, maybe we shouldn't do this. Don't dwell on obstacles. And then I think tip number 8 is almost just a heads up. There's an interesting difficulty curve. First week, 2 weeks of 75 hard, it's just hard. It overwhelms you. Everything about it is pretty difficult. Even just remembering all the tasks you have to do, building habits, getting through all the workouts. Then there's a 10 to 30 day period after that where you start to hit a rhythm, and a lot of people start to just enjoy 75 hard. It's simple, it's rhythm, you start to feel really good, you start noticing changes, right? And that's the easiest part. It's almost the part where you start coasting. And then there's the very difficult point. It's different for everybody, but day 40 to day 60, somewhere in there, where you actually start to get extremely bored. And there's this voice in your head that says, hey, you've learned your lessons, you've done a lot, you've accomplished 50 days, you're doing really well, you don't need to finish the whole thing, like, you get it, right? You're just doing the same thing over and over, it's kind of boring, it's kind of tedious. And that is perhaps maybe the hardest part of 75 hard. Everybody's a little bit different, but a lot of people, myself included, found that part to be the hardest. Now, heading on to tip number 9. Tip number 9 is actually a really small one. I know that everyone has a different experience with alcohol and they have different expectations, and more importantly, we're all surrounded with different types of people, whether it's our coworkers, family, friends, everyone's a little bit different here. And I know that I'm not alone in that some people question why you don't drink alcohol. If you go out and you say, hey, I'm not going to drink anything, there's absolutely a peer pressure of like, really? And you kind of get treated a certain way. Again, not for everyone. Not every coworker is like that, not every friend is like that, and hopefully you don't have too many people like this. But if you're worried about that peer pressure, I actually found just telling people directly, I'm working on 75 hard. 75 hard means I'm not drinking alcohol for 75 days. It's this crazy challenge, and go from there. I personally experienced way better reactions to that than just saying, hey, I don't drink, or I'm not going to drink today. Now, should you really be worried what other people think? No, that's on them. This tip, though, is to help you, because peer pressure is a thing. If it's something that just doesn't bother you, then awesome, and this tip maybe isn't for you. But in the real world, unfortunately, whether that person's wrong or not, doesn't really matter. Peer pressure is a thing. So this tip is really just be very direct, be very forward, say, hey, I'm doing this crazy thing. You can be dramatic, you can emphasize how ridiculous it is, whatever you want, say whatever you want, but calling attention to 75 hard makes it seem much more digestible, for some reason, to those people that would give you a hard time or where you would feel peer pressure. And the final tip I'll give you is, again, a lesson I learned through 75 hard itself, and that is to change your mindset. Start to ignore and silence the voices that say, hey, can I do this? Or how hard is today going to be? And instead think on, yeah, today's another day. Whatever happens, happens, and we're going to get through it. It's about building a mindset where you trust yourself, you're capable, you can do it, you will succeed. You just have to decide that you will. I wish you luck on 75 hard if you choose to do it, and I will see you on the other side. If you liked this video or have feedback, please let me know and leave a comment, and maybe I'll make some more. I love 75 hard. I'm doing my own version right now, and yeah, so we really knocked that out of the park. We just bullied right on through, huh? If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. It means the world to me. Have a good one.